live. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff. We are live. You're here on the chain. Today, we have a lot of great things that we want to get into. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about crypto manipulation. We're going to talk about media bias. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the voter rolls. So, all of these things in one, all the things going on at the moment are all very relevant. All the crossover, media bias manipulation at the highest levels filters into government manipulation by the SEC chair. If you think about the latest court cases and objective on dismantling crypto. And of course, there's still those podcast, YouTube fanboys that still think that the left, and this must be just a leftist deranged syndrome, the left is going to turn around somehow and they're all of a sudden going to come out and support crypto and everything's going to be great. And we're going to be back on path to financial success. But yet, none of the talking heads on the left seem to be embracing innovation and all those great things that you want with crypto. So we're going to get into that, a lot of other things. So if you guys are ready to kick it off, I'm ready to go. What are we going to share? What are we going to go with here today? I think let's go. All right, let's go. So first and foremost, welcome to everybody. Give a quick shout out where you are tuning in from. We see a lot of brand new names that filter through here on both X and YouTube. So I love seeing that. I love seeing engagement here. And if you're over on X, go ahead and throw some comments in because we're watching the comments live. If you prefer, jump over from X, go to YouTube, and you can engage with everybody over there. So we got Oklahoma here so far. Welcome. And there's a brand new name. I don't think I've ever seen David on here before. So welcome to On the Chain. So here we go. We're going to kick the first thing I want to kick off. There's a PSA announcement that came in from Brad Garlinghouse. Now, if you guys didn't already know this, then maybe we need to talk about it a little bit. So let's make sure we're setting up our screen shares. Oh my God, yesterday I was running a workshop yesterday. We have full AV that we set up, multiple cameras. We have all this stuff for our workshop. And then I was throwing a curveball, and all of a sudden we have people that brought their PowerPoints late. We had videos in PowerPoints. We had external videos that weren't in the PowerPoint. We had PDF PowerPoints. We had people that weren't able to move their PowerPoint over to a thumb drive. They had their laptop and they weren't able to look at the two 85-inch monitors behind them to do their talk. So they wanted to have their laptop. And then we had all these different things going on. End up turning out pretty amazing. But here I am, I'm trying to orchestrate and put all these various pieces together when I thought, hey, I was just going to put the PowerPoint on auto. And with all the ceiling mounted cameras I have, then I try to figure out, hey, how are we now going to record this whole event? Because I've got the whole AV set up, secondary monitor with 8 different switches, stuff going on. And then, now I got to set up a second laptop to record it. And the overall complexity was trying to figure out, how do I connect an HDMI camera to a laptop to record? And typically you do an HDMI, it's not going to go in unless you have a video capture card. It turned out to go pretty well. Ended up using an external camera to have somebody record some of the clips. But anyhow, here we go. I was just thinking about this as I'm like switching back and forth. So one of the things that we had to do, so we had all the people that were in attendance. Then, of course, another curveball was have to bring 2 people in back to back from remote. So they weren't able to fly, and one person's flight was canceled, etc. So here we are orchestrating, have the platform, all that stuff. It was a good day event, but it was kind of crazy anyways. So, all right, here we go. Let's start with this. Let's start with Brad Garlinghouse, because if you didn't know this already, then maybe we should read it and reread it. Now, YouTube doesn't seem to know that because you see a lot of these scams pop up on a regular basis, whether it's in comments to a video or just videos in general. Sometimes there's scammy videos out there that run, and I think they've done a pretty good job of killing those. But then you have all the scammy comments that can pop up. But here we go. Let's see. It sounds like a broken record. Ripple and execs will never ask you to send us XRP. It's pathetic to see scammers prey on and exploit innocent crypto users, and the ease at which social media platforms allow it to happen. Stop, spot, avoid, protect yourself. Uh, it's crazy. So here it is again. Look, the YouTube channel of India's Supreme Court was compromised on Friday. The channel, which otherwise streams court cases for viewers and the press, showed videos promoting XRP. That was probably not the actual channel. Maybe it was a fraudulent channel, because that's what happens. They pop up and it looks like a legit channel. And so a lot of times you'll say, oh, this is coming from Brad Garlinghouse, or Brad Garlinghouse is the key topic, or whatever it might be. Since we're on the Brad Garlinghouse Ripple topic. So you always have to be vigilant. Always make sure you're out there protecting yourself, protecting your interest, and don't just send your money just on the fly to any place. And there you go. They had their password set to India 123. That's probably what it was, unfortunately. All right, here we go. Where have we left? See that? Look at that. David's first time here. So welcome. Glad you are joining us here on the chain. Chip is out today, and Chip will be back with us tomorrow night. And we typically dissect and workshop all sorts of different topics, from geopolitics to crypto. And here we go. So we're going to have a great show today. We're going to go through lots of different topics. And so I want to get some of the crypto related topics up front. And let's see what we've got. We're going to talk about voter rolls, because I think it's really critical that we dig into what's going on with the misrepresentation of the count on voter rolls and what has to be done to clean it up. That's vital. Now, the thing is, early voting has already started. The manipulation of the voter rolls will probably have most of those people voting via mail, which has fraud written all over it to begin with. If you think about the way absentee ballots were meant to work, they weren't meant to say, hey, there's a person at this physical address, send them a ballot. An absentee ballot, you had to go to the courthouse with proof of residency, proof of your current address, and a or a photo ID of some form, whether passport or driver's license, etc. That is how you would get an absentee ballot. You go to the courthouse. At least that was in Florida. That's changed now that all sides have somehow embraced this mail-in ballot, and to me, it's just going to cause more havoc, more chaos, and that obviously has to change. It has to change relatively quickly. Now, you can have voter ID all you want at the polls, but if you're going to allow the fraud of the mail-in ballot to take place, you're always going to have an offset that you can't specifically prove is accurate. And we're going to see 3 states in specific that have been doing just that. And there's some massive, massive problems. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I do want to put this up because this is something that we've talked a lot about over the past couple of years, and that has to do with the SEC and really the overstep of the SEC by one well-known individual, the chair of the SEC, as you guys know, that is Gary Gensler. Hang on one second. Get some of this beautiful dark roast espresso coffee right here. No, that's good. That's really good. Now I realize I don't have enough of it. So, oh, by the way, If you guys haven't done so already, make sure you go and check out. Let me just throw this up here. This helps go and support the show here, but check it out. This is badass coffee or badass yetiscoffee.com, badass So if you go to badass check it out. Really good stuff, easy to buy. It's fresh, roasted on the spot when you order it. You get it shipped, it's roasted, packaged, shipped to you. One of the best coffees. Got whole bean. You can have it pre-ground. Check out the Obsidian Bold or the Noir Symphony if you like a strong, dark roast, which I do. I like that. I like that really dark roasted espresso. That's really good. Oh god, it's perfect. Perfect. So, all right, let's pull this up. We'll get a little bit into the video here too. It's a short video clip. And this post was put up. I'll share it here in a second by Colin Brown. I appreciate Colin for throwing it up here, and a big researcher and supporter of various blockchains here. So there's Colin Brown, blockchain researcher and great supporter of Bitcoin, XRP, the SHIB. If you haven't checked out the SHIB, IOTA, VeChain, Hedera, etc. So let's see. This looks like it's a little bit of a montage. But here we go. SEC regrets any confusion, but clearly confusion was their strategy, at least Gary Gensler's strategy. There's always been all sorts of confusion, weaved in to this whole thing. And spot on. Gary Gensler does have it in for Elon Musk. And this is part of the complete overreach. He's just a zealot. He's a partisan. He's not looking out for the people. 100% politically motivated attacks, as is this attack overall on crypto. And they've been going to the exchanges one by one. Even Coinbase, after they approve Coinbase, they allow Coinbase to do an IPO. They launch their stock. They go public. The SEC would have had to have done all sorts of back end research prior to allowing Coinbase to go public. Then the SEC comes back to Coinbase and said, we have a problem with your business model, your current and future business model. Yet they would have had to have approved all of that. So then they come and they sue Coinbase, as they have Kraken, Binance, Ripple. Obviously, they're going after the big entities. They can't come after Bitcoin, mainly because there's no one singular entity. They can't come after most of the assets. Now, one of the things that Chip and I have said for many years, as this started, 3 years ago, which was the court case of the SEC filed against Ripple, at the time could have been and has proven to be the fast track to classifying the XRP digital asset as a non-security, regardless of what Gary Gensler thinks or doesn't think, regardless of anything else, whatever the motivation was, however it started. We said right from the beginning, at some point, we're going to look back at it, and we said it the whole time, but it's going to be the fast track to classifying it as a non-security. And guess what happened? That's exactly what happened. Congress slow rolls pretty much everything. Crypto has been slow rolled through Congress for many, many years, for at least 6 years. And so as we monitor and watch this slow roll, think about the Token Taxonomy Act 2018, introduced by Warren Davidson and Darren Soto, a bipartisan effort because Darren Soto is a Democrat. Warren Davidson is a Republican. It was a bipartisan effort to provide regulatory clarity for the crypto space. The bill at the time, Congress, Senate, controlled by the Democrats. The Maxine Waters was the chair of the Financial Services Committee, came to the committee, died in committee, never got discussion, went there multiple times over, and died each time it arrived. It was dead on arrival to begin with. They had no desire to further promote it. However, the one darling of Maxine Waters, Gary Gensler, Joe Biden, etc., uh, and that whole gang was, guess who? You guys know him? That's right, the founder of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, was the darling and poster child of that group. Maxine Waters, Gary Gensler, Biden, etc. It was a mechanism of funneling money to the Democrat Party, which had been proven, multiple times over. And it was also, it appears, just based on all these different power plays that were taking place at that moment, it was prematurely collapsed. They needed more money for the 2022, 2024 election cycle, and millions, millions, if not hundreds of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions would have been funneled through FTX to Democrat campaigns. That didn't happen. So there's a lot of intrigue over that, because if you look at the fall of Celsius, uh, Sam Bankman-Fried, he was a catalyst to the vast collapse of Celsius. Binance, if you think about the chair of Binance at the time, was kind of a catalyst of the fast collapse of FTX, just based on some of the things that happened out in public. Obviously, there was a lot of other, facts and parts to the puzzle that allowed it to collapse, but those are like the catalyst. Um, Kind of the spark. And then you have the chair, Gensler, going after Binance after the fact. And now, obviously, he's going after Elon Musk, who spent $44 billion for freedom of speech, to protect freedom of speech, I should say. It's insane. And so here's, like, David is said, I'm pissed over the pass for ETH. Yeah. As SBF gave them millions, millions. He was the largest donor. And there's a guy that came from nowhere, absolutely nowhere. He came from FTX, grew out of the ashes from zero to all of a sudden funneling millions and millions of dollars to Democrat coffers. And you have to say, why him? Why not? Why wasn't it Celsius? Why wasn't it Binance? Why wasn't it Coinbase? Why wasn't one of the big exchanges that had been around for a while? And Celsius, not a good example, but let's say Kraken. Why not Kraken? Why not Coinbase? Why not Binance? Why not one of the other, many different exchanges? Why didn't they go to one of those CEOs of one of those exchanges and invite them in, say, hey, you've been in this space from the beginning. Why don't you guys help us draft some legislation that's going to be pro crypto? But instead, they brought Sam Bankman-Fried in. It is just a whole very convoluted scenario. The whole thing is, and there you go, Chad Gensler, definitely a political hack, definitely kind of a very clownish, as we've as we've said, multiple times. And that is the bottom line. And all the other exchanges got punished for it. Every one of them, one after another. They went after everybody, and they're not done yet. And that's what we're seeing here, right? So the entire ecosystem of Ripple, especially XRP, suffered massive losses. Gary Gensler should be held guilty and pay a substantial fine to all investors and Ripple Labs. So we could empty out, hold him for fraud. If they fine him, where's the money going? He definitely needs to be held in contempt and fraud, and something. They have to go after this guy for what he did. If they can find some form of collusion for something, the minimum, the government is then directly responsible for the loss in the billions within the crypto industry because of what he's done. Billions. It's directly negatively impacted many, many people all over the world because of one man, right? Because of Gary Gensler. Definitely impacted price movement of XRP, and it was proof showing at the exact moment, as it's unfolded, over time, that has really impacted the industry and innovation at large, not around the world, but innovation in the U.S. for sure. But it's definitely, handcuffed the overall development, even if it's on a global scale. But let's open this up. Let's just go through this real quick, make sure the volume's up. Hopefully we can hear it. Let's do a quick check here.
I think there's been
Okay, perfect. So let's just watch through this real quick.
I think there's been clarity for years. I'm not going to speak about one. I'm not going to speak to any one matter. I'm not going to get into any one company or one token. But I can't speak about any possible investigations. And I'm not speaking to all the other tokens. But I'm not going to get into any one filing because I'm not going to talk about any one of these tokens. I can't speak to any one case or any one situation.
Could you speak to the Ethereum issue?
I'm not going to go into any one set of conversations between the agency and a company. Not want me to speak about any one set of facts and circumstance. And the laws are clear. The law is clear. I think the law is clear. I think there's been clear.
The law is clear. The law is clear. The law is so clear. The law is clear. That's, I mean, you watch through it. It's like, come on. I mean, it's too much. You know, right. Robinhood, they went after Robinhood. They went after Robinhood a couple times, actually. There was one of them, when they went after Robinhood the first time over, holding not just crypto, but, some of the back end inner workings of Robinhood. And, they go after anything that is outside of the mainstream as there's a major shift. And I was thinking about, I've thought for a long time that the digital asset space, and you look at maybe XRP or just digital assets in general, as the big institutions, governments, things like that, it starts coming in to become more commonplace. Some of these assets made for development, each one kind of has its own, purpose, direction, similar, let's say Bitcoin, store of value, slow to move, but it's maintaining, it's adopted on a global scale already, recognition, first mover. People seem to have overall confidence in Bitcoin. The other digital assets, you can kind of scale down through the different purposes with smart contracts and things like that. Now you have Ripple and others introducing stable coins into the financial institution space to where the financial institutions won't need the underlying tokens of a technology to help move any kind of money. So let's say the objective of the XRP was fast and cheap movement of money going through the XRPL, which has a native DEX built into it. So you could really exchange this for that. It doesn't matter what currency you put in, you could pump out a different currency. That's kind of the objective of the technology. Ripple, obviously gravitating, building RippleNet for the banking industry, was all about this seamless movement of money to have it happen in seconds rather than days, and having full transparency of transaction. The objective of utilizing the XRPL as the undercurrent technology was also then meant to have to utilize the XRP token asset within that transaction. There's obviously been a pivot up, and then being able to utilize a stable coin instead of the token, which is going to fluctuate in price point. A stable currency, is pegged typically to the US dollar or something else, or a basket, but typically, to the US dollar. And now banks will say, okay, they'll move, and if the technology is using a stable coin, they won't even mind sitting on the stable coin. So if we think about Nostro Vostro accounts now with dollars in all these accounts all over the world, to simplify and help speed up transaction, although you still need a third-party entity within the movement. So you'll probably still need a third-party transactor, maybe not. But if you're utilizing software, if all these parties are now holding stable coin within the technology, they're willing to sit on that stable coin. So if it's dollar to dollar, then imagine, bank A in the US, bank B overseas, they both are sitting on accounts of stablecoin, and they're transacting and they're moving, and the bank is taking it upon themselves. So if I have $1,000 in bank A and I need to move it to someone overseas in bank B, the bank says, well, you've got $1,000. Okay, they send $1,000 in stablecoin over to Bank B. Bank B gets $1,000 in stablecoin, and they're like, okay, it's here's the exchange rate, and they are then allotting X amount over to their client in pounds or whatever, wherever the bank is. And it would be a fast, simple transaction point, and they can accommodate. There would be more to it, but it would be so simple, right? And that transaction would be fast. It would be relatively cheap, and the whole solution could be done with full transparency. And then they can sit on the stable coin. They're not going to be as concerned. Unfortunately, even in the FX markets, there's fluctuation of currency. So as the US dollar has been the reserve currency on a global scale, people have been more comfortable sitting on US dollar accounts. If you're over in India and you're sitting on a bank full of rupees, then guess what happens to your rupees? The FX has wide swings on the rupee. And so as those wide swings occur, your accounts are valuing and devaluing when you have to buy product overseas, and it's happening on a fast interval. And so now if you're able to sit on a stable coin versus a US dollar, and you're able to help that transaction, it changes the name and the dynamics of everything that's happening. So then we go back to the bigger question: what is then the purpose of the digital asset over all these stable coins? And I believe there's still going to be purpose. There's still part of within the technology. It's if you look at all these assets, valuation, we're looking at value to Bitcoin, value to US dollar, value to other currency. And that's how we're relating it. We're looking at one XRP, one Bitcoin. Let's say a Bitcoin is worth $63,000. If the value of Bitcoin goes up, then it is, obviously the valuation on the Bitcoin over the time from inception to now has held, maintained, and increased value versus the US dollar, and it's a more valuable asset. And that means the US dollar has gone through more of a kind of an inflationary period, as the valuation has gone down. Yeah. And so, so we have a devaluation of the US dollar as it pertains to a Bitcoin. And so if you look at it on a currency scale, dollar to euro, dollar to Canadian dollar, dollar to pound, etc. Obviously there's always, minor changes, and maybe these are newly introduced currency into the institutions. I would love to see the direction all of this is taken as they introduce the stable coins, and then figure out what exactly are these governments, and a Gary Gensler, or the big financial institutions, or and you have Ripple, and then you have Swift, and you have all these different entities now that are vying for playing to control the space. And at the end of the day, from the government perspective or a Gary Gensler perspective, towing the line of his administration, it's all about control and manipulation. So if you control the ebb and flow of the money, then you're going to control the people. You're going to control the institutions. You're going to control the banking infrastructure. You're going to control. There's so many control elements to what you're going to be able to do with all of that. And we have to look at how all these pieces are coming together on a grander scale, whether it's within the U.S. market, within the Euro markets, within a global structure. This is where it becomes really interesting, why we love kind of looking at different things and then workshopping through it. But then you can see the power players, again, like this Gary Gensler, where he's fitting in and how he's trying to manipulate. So we have the digital asset space, which represents freedom. And then you have the Gary Gensler, who's on the opposite side. He's the anti-freedom side, right? Because he wants to maintain and control the populace. For him, everything's clear. When there's zero regulatory clarity within U.S. markets, to him it's clear. But then it's now also been shown that there's been manipulation because there is no direct clarity. And this becomes extremely problematic. And then we enter into an election cycle. And then we have, those within these the crypto fanboys that are out there who still believe that the leftists, a Kamala Harris or a Gary Gensler, or some of these other elected officials, Elizabeth Warren, that somehow they're going to come around and they're going to start embracing cryptocurrency. They've been against cryptocurrency. It's not part of their policy. They don't want to further innovation. They're focused on a few key things. Economy isn't one of them. From an economic perspective, if they were passionate about economic growth in this country, they wouldn't handcuff industry. They would allow the free flow of crude oil and find a way to allow the United States to be energy independent, completely energy independent of whatever happens around the world, as you are trying to develop new technologies. So if you can have, uh, you have coal, you have to drill for oil. You have to look at the technologies of solar. How can you make it more efficient? Are windmills really going to be the most efficient means of powering our country? Uh, Probably not. Plus, they're ugly. If you drive around Europe and you see wind farms or solar farms, it's the worst thing you could ever see. To me, it's a blight on the natural spaces. You have the leftists who keep talking about nature, and yet they put these horrible windmills that murder who knows how many thousands of birds every year. And then you have solar panels that are supposedly massive solar panels collecting heat, from the sun or light. And you can't tell me that they're not producing massive amount of reflection and heat because they have these massive farms. And you can't tell me that's not causing a problem. Plus, it looks horrible. It's just like stupidity. So just because it's your idea, it becomes the right idea, right? It's been shown that global warming as a trend over history since the creation of the world. We've had super hot moments, really, really cold moments, really, really hot moments, really, really cold. We went through an ice age, then we went through a complete warming, and now it's kind of normalized. And you're going to tell me all these massive swings that the little blip of humankind is going to have an impact of a massive swing like that. Even if there was nuclear Armageddon and we wiped out the earth, then and we exploded everything, eventually the world would regulate itself with or without, and it's insane. Right. And this is like the mentality where it all comes back to control. Fear mongering and control is the narrative. And all of this is factoring into one another. So when we get this great understanding of how the geopolitics and the crypt and the financial markets kind of come together, and then we realize that, holy crap, we got to have some understanding of the geopolitics. You don't have to be 100% over to geopolitics. You don't want to be 100% just focused on economics. Let's find that middle ground, so we have a good understanding of how we're moving our country forward, right? So here you go. I like the nuclear idea. Why don't you put panels on parking garages? Right. That's a great point too. I look at down in South Florida. Why is it that we don't have a solid solar technology that's been developed up to this point? I know Elon Musk was onto that direction with putting tiles on roofs. Why shouldn't all of our homes be? We have sun pretty much all the time. Obviously, it rains a lot. There's clouds, but for the most part, there's states that have sun on a regular basis. Why isn't there a technology to absorb the sun right with the house? Why isn't the house infrastructure built with that technology now? Solar technology for heating water on roofs has been around for forever. I mean, it seems like, right? It's been around a really long time, where you have the water up tank, whether it's on the roof or in the house, and you have the solar panel up on the roof, and that's what's heating up the water. It's overseas, it's here in this country, been around forever, but yet they haven't figured out a way to have some form of a solar panel built into the roof, to where you can actually harness it, instead of putting huge solar panels over roof tiles that cause damage to the roof tiles, that can be blown off during hurricanes, that get damaged, that prevent you from properly cleaning your roof, and it just doesn't look good. So why can't they figure out that technology? That's the crazy thing. There's no motivation, because energy is an industry, and energy produces huge amounts of money, huge amounts of taxation. If you allow people to be self-sufficient, you get rid of, just like California, like, oh, how do they push everyone to electric? And then they're like, well, wait a minute, now we got to charge everyone extra. You're paying tax on electricity. So if you're pushing electricity into your car, then there's already a tax, but they want to add more taxes because people are moving to electric and they realize, oh shoot, they were collecting a lot more on gas. So now they got to figure that out. It just like it gets, it gets so crazy. Like the whole thing is just insane, right? Drill, baby, drill. That's right. We gotta drill, gotta find a mechanism, find our path to becoming completely energy sufficient and independent. Then you can worry about everything else. Get us to that point. It's not gonna the world isn't going to global warm according to their policy overnight, even though they said it was going to happen multiple times over the years. We should have already either been underwater. There was a global cooling phase they had. Then it was global heating, global warming, then climate change. Whatever their narrative is to collect more money. That's what it all boiled down to, is like, how can they find their path to just collect more and more money? All right, let's move on here. So here we go. So doing some searches here, I came across this and I saw Sean McGuire also commented and posted this up here as well. So this is it. Sean McGuire got it. So I'm using his X post. Such a staggering narrative violation around January 6th. We know that Trump called for the National Guard. We know he asked Pelosi, he asked the mayor of DC to make sure there were appropriate security measures being taken in and around the Capitol on January 6th. But we also know that it didn't happen, right? So Trump asked the Pentagon for a National Guard. And so as we drill into this, which we've all known, but I like it just right there in the public space, media is going to keep burying it. There was this fictitious narrative that has been built in and around this whole thing. It was a talking point, just like they try to use, oh, Trump is a felon, and Trump was able to spin that back around at them. The cats and dogs, we have Haitians eating cats and dogs in the streets. A narrative on illegal immigration, dumping 20,000 Haitians on a community of 60,000 people. So you grow it, by a 30% margin. I mean, that's insane, the stuff they're doing. But yes, were they eating cats and dogs? There's lots of videos showing it. Is it rampant? Don't know. But when they reference that, it spins the narrative. Trump has embraced it. There's a lot of people, if you go through X or YouTube, there's some really funny songs that have been put together in and around it. But here's the big one. All right, January 6th, General Milley confirmed Trump directed officials on January 3rd to ensure safety on January 6th. So think about the narrative where we saw protests from Antifa and BLM over summers, over a period of a couple of years, burning cities down, taking over city blocks, violence, police being injured in the more than dozens, probably in the hundreds. People were fighting in the streets on a regular basis, protests taking over freeways and, again, city blocks, and shooting fireworks and spraying bear mace. And there were all these things. All this stuff was happening. People were being murdered. People were murdered, trying to protect the sanctity of their communities. All this stuff happened, and then January 6th was the problem. So leading up to so Trump knew, hey, this is going to be a contentious moment. We need adequate safety on the streets because you're going to have all these different players. This also going over years. We played the video last week, and we play it all the time, of Democrat politicians calling for violence against Republicans and calling Trump a neo-Nazi and calling Republicans neo-Nazis and racist and a threat to democracy and a threat to this country. And they ramped it up. These were political elected officials in high position making claims that they need to perpetrate violence against people. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren. The list goes down the list. You go down the list. We put them up there. The things, Schumer, I'm sure, all of them, all, that we can go back and watch that video, but they all called for violence. What do you expect is going to happen after we had summers of violence? Kamala Harris said, "Oh, they're protesting." I'm surprised they're not going to stop. They're going to keep protesting. And Nancy Pelosi or the media reported, said, when was it stated that protests should not be violent? And so they created the emotion and the turmoil. They did everything they could to label Trump a neo-Nazi and a racist and everyone and any Republican, and basically established a complete divide in the country, the Democrats. And they also played in racial tension, racial division. And this is the narrative of the Democrat Party, and it has been for a long time. So anyone today who's embracing the direction of the Democrat Party, you have to really question their morality, their ethics, and their logic, because you can see the disparity. You can see a clear direction that things are moving in. RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. There's many politicians that were on the left that are now leaving the Democrat Party. They might be independents. They're not becoming Republicans necessarily, but they're all getting behind and supporting Donald Trump. Why are they supporting Donald Trump? Because they see the clear path of where the two parties are leading. One is moving towards freedom, supporting our Constitution. The other is moving towards a socialist, Marxist state that wants division. They say that Trump wants to end the Constitution. All they have are fake narrative talking points of lies. I was watching some videos the other day, kind of man on the street interviewing different people, Trump, Harris, and they're going within different communities. A lot were for Trump. One, they were talking to her, why Harris? Well, I don't watch the news. I only see what's on my phone. So they know that. They push all the narratives in your stream, in your feed, on your phone, with all the fraudulent topic and points that they want to get across, the narrative that they want to promote, the idea that they want to have in your brain is that Trump was a racist, the Republicans are bad, white people are bad, and then here's how you have to vote. Kamala Harris, Trump is against the Constitution. All these fake talking points, and then when it comes down to it, what do the Democrats want to do? They laugh at anybody who supports the Second Amendment. Oh, they just want their Bibles and their guns, and they laugh at the Second Amendment. All of them. There are very few. Then even Kamala Harris and the crazy guy she has running with her as VP, they both come out, oh, we're gun owners. Kamala Harris, there's no way she's a gun owner. There's no possible way. I would like her to prove it. Prove that she's owned a gun for years, not just like all of a sudden, come out now and just say, oh yeah, but prove that you're in support of the Second Amendment, because they're going to do everything possible to restrict your Second Amendment rights. They're trying to restrict First Amendment rights. Forget about sex. So who is going after the Constitution? Then they say that Republicans or Trump are anti-Constitution because Trump was, the Supreme Court was able to push abortion discussion back to the states where it belongs. It's not a federal issue. We have a government of states. We have a republic. The federal government doesn't dictate everything. We have a constitution that's in place. The states have to follow the Constitution. The states have their own constitution. The states have their own amendments and their own policies. You can go to a more liberal state. You can go to a more conservative state. That's up to you. You have the freedom and luxury to leave and move someplace else. But that's where it all belongs. It belongs back at the state level. Let the people make the decision. You can't allow some corrupted unelected bureaucrats and some elected officials make these massive decisions. It's kind of like allowing Congress to vote on their own pay increases, which is insane, right? The whole thing is insane. Imagine not just believing in the Constitution, but imagine teaching the Constitution. Imagine if schools actually taught the Constitution, right? So there, I carry these in my car, the Constitution. I had a group come in and speak, and they give these out to schools, and so I have a whole bunch of them in my car. Someone's like, "Hey, they haven't read the Constitution." Well, here you go. Check out the Constitution, because this is what this country was actually built on, right? I mean, that's right. And then you have the Declaration of Independence. So there's so much that people don't realize. They don't want kids to know this. They don't want them to learn about the Constitution. They don't want them to say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning when they start the day. Why shouldn't they pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States? Why shouldn't they be proud of being in this country? What's wrong with being proud of your country? What's wrong for anybody in Poland to be proud of being in Poland? What's wrong with someone down in El Salvador to be proud about being in El Salvador? What's wrong with someone being over in Sweden? Or let's say you have someone over in Iraq. Why can't they be proud to be an Iraqi? And why can't they then support and focus on themselves and the betterment of their own people? But what we see is the corruptive nature of governments and the misrepresentation of what freedoms really are, right? And where they come from and how they're protected and how much the U.S. has put themselves on the line, the blood and the sweat and the tears and the financial resources that the United States has put on the line to try to achieve that balance. Granted, they haven't done everything perfectly. There's been some missteps. We have different governments, different presidents, different ideas of what they want to do. We saw Biden pull out of Afghanistan, which left a disaster in the wake. And we have the Taliban resurgence over in Afghanistan. So all of the things that the United States did over there, and we knew you can't build democracy. There's no such thing as a true democracy working without the corruptive nature of it. But yet Bill Clinton and they talk a lot about it as the Clinton Foundation runs around the world. The Democrats talk about democracy all the time. George Bush, GW, talked about the democracy and nation building. You can't do that. You can't build with this democracy, because the democracy has a corruptive nature. There has to be a constitution. There has to be a fabric of society. There has to be some ideals. There's more to the substance of it. And then you can't just if you're going to do that, you can't just abandon it. You have to keep tweaking it. But then you have to look at all the power players that are around. If you go into an environment that is dictated by tribal leadership, how do you bring tribes together that are operating from past, from decades in the past or centuries in the past? They're still operating with tribal mentality. Can you have a general tribal leadership, and then you find a mechanism, and it's not necessarily going to be, can you have some semblance of a republic? Can you have some semblance of voting amongst the tribes to figure out what's going to be good? And then if you have a pure democracy, even at the tribal level, because you're going to be in let's say Afghanistan or parts of the Middle East that are still very tribal, or in Africa, which is very tribal, and you have the different heads, and there's conflict, and because of the artificial borders of the nation states that have been drawn, you put warring factors within one country that don't necessarily have overlap of cultural dynamic, and then you want them to come together in peace, and you almost set it up to fail right from the onset. How do you bring those together? How do you create that narrative? Then you have all the Western countries putting their mark on it, saying you have to be exactly like us. You have to operate exactly like us. We don't want people operating like a North Korea, or even the leadership like over in Iran, of how it works and how they subjugate their own people, or the lack of freedoms, or what they now in Afghanistan with the Taliban in charge, and they're putting women back in burqas and cover them up, and they're going to beat them, and who knows what they're doing. They're taking away all the advancements that were being made over in Afghanistan, and then the Western world's like, oh no, we're out, we're done, go ahead, you're on your own. That's problematic. And you could look at it and say the United States took a responsibility once we were there to help maintain and monitor. What do we do with Japan and Germany? Did we abandon Japan and Germany, or do we still have bases over in both countries, and allowing for a rebuilding? You have two entities that during World War II were brought down to their knees, that were aggressive elements, but yet we rebuilt them, and look at how they flourish today. Look at what's going on, just the dynamics. I'm simplifying it to such an extent, but look at what we did there. Why couldn't we do that over in Afghanistan? They don't have a passion to rebuild themselves. They didn't have that dynamic. Their dynamic is exactly what we're seeing right now. You have the negative power players, but we're not maintaining a presence there. You're also dealing with an extremist element of a religion that, we didn't have that dynamic in Germany or Japan. These people wanted freedom. You have a dynamic of a religion over there that subjugates their people, that looks at all other religion as second class religions. So you have a major issue that are in conflict, and a lot of other turmoil that didn't allow it to happen. So then you go back, and I know I kind of sidetracked on all this, but I look at what is like the mindset of the Democrat, the leftists. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to achieve by forcing their mentality on us? Why can't I support the Constitution? We're in the United States. This is the United States with a freedom of speech. Freedom, you can have your own political views. There's no real such thing as hate speech unless you call for violence against other people, which incidentally these politicians did do. They called for violence against other people. They didn't have the freedom of speech to say something like that. You can't come out and say, go attack them wherever they are. You're in a position of power. If you're in a position of power, people look up. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to go peacefully protest, or are they going to go be violent? When Trump was up there on January 6th, he said, peacefully, go assemble, let your voice be heard. Trump didn't say go create violence. There was nothing. Everything that they've done has spun it out of control. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So then as we look at this, I'm like way sidetracked on this. But you look at this came out from the Oversight Committee, House Administration Subcommittee to Oversight, previously concealed by the Biden-Harris administration, Department of Defense. The subcommittee has uncovered statements by key personnel involved in the deployment of DC National Guard to the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. The new transcripts indicate the senior Pentagon officials unnecessarily delayed the DC National Guard response to the. Why do you think they delayed it? Was it due to optics, or because they understood exactly what was going to happen? Because there were also players that were there to create violent behavior. I've seen it firsthand. I've been over the years, not necessarily now, but over many years, I've seen how right here in our backyard with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I went to an event and multiple events. They packed the event. She does very few town halls. This was a number of years ago. Packed the event with paid union thugs. The union thugs were in the street. There were protests outside. The union thugs were there as muscle, not to counter protest, but to try to intimidate. They were sitting inside the event. And so you can't tell me that that based on all of that we didn't see that they were manipulating and trying to manipulate the outcome, just like with this. And this is really interesting, right? This is what's coming out. This is what people are reporting. It's on X, but look where it comes from. It comes from the House Administration Subcommittee. They're finding facts on the ground that they try to hide it. And this is why RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and so many others are coming over. They said, because you know what? The Democrat Party has changed so drastically. It's shifted so far to the left. It's unbelievable. And they knew, they orchestrated this. It wasn't like, oh, I wonder what will happen. They knew exactly what would happen. Trump saying this is what we need, but it was the narrative. They want to continually put Trump in a position. That's what all these lawsuits were about. That's why they impeached him, not because it was an impeachable offense, but they had the numbers in Congress, both the House and the Senate, to impeach him. So they did, whether right or wrong, they impeached him because it was a talking point. Oh, you're the only president that we had, blah, 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 blah. Then they bring him to court and they convict him on what? Right? On what? Now he's going to go through court case after court case and get him thrown out. But he's supposedly he's not convicted. It's so absurd of what they've done, right? And the judge and the whole narrative of everything that's been built in and around it. How does this all factor back into crypto? Because crypto, the narrative is freedom, right? What was the Bitcoin originally? It was about freedom for the people, movement of money, store of value, store your own money. Don't allow other people to control the narrative. Here we see this whole narrative being controlled to an outcome of political violence coming from a leftist narrative. Because in all these other countries, guess where the violent behavior comes from? Is it a right, conservative, limited government approach, or is it a left-wing, socialist, Marxist agenda? North Korea, over the years, Nazism, leftist, socialist, all throughout Latin America, in Brazil, in country after country. You can go down the list and you'll see this leftist narrative of what they've done with this idea of socialism, right, to come out and help the people, right? And they create class warfare. They have this division, and that's what Venezuela did very, very well with Hugo Chavez. Was look at the grocery stores; they're overcharging you for food. The same narrative that the Democrats are using today. Oh, the grocery stores that make 2 or 3% markup, they're overcharging you for food. That's why the cost of food is so high. Not because fuel, not because of bad policy, not because of the mass number of illegal immigrants that are coming in and robbing stores blind. Look at California. That theft is okay. They can rob whoever they want. There's no real freedoms anymore, right? I mean, all these different things that and turmoil. But here you have January 3rd, General Mark Milley, Joint Chief of Staff. The president just says, hey, look at this. There's going to be a large number of protesters here on the 6th. Make sure you have the sufficient National Guard or soldiers to make sure it's a safe event. That's all you have to see. Make sure it's a safe event. Make sure you have the personnel on the ground because there's going to be people from all sides. It's going to be crazy. Make sure it's peaceful. Now, they keep also focusing on the fact, and Pence wrong in what he did, but when you send electors to the state to cast the votes, they don't have to cast according to what was given them. They can adjust. But the point is that although they were there and Trump was right, the narrative goes back to the state. The states weren't upholding their part of the bargain during the voting process. It was up to the state to adhere to state constitutional requirements for the voting system. So regardless of what happened towards the end, the states already ignored what their responsibilities were. And Trump kept saying it has to go back to the state. It's a state House and Senate. It's the state governors that are responsible to make sure that things are happening along the right path. And they didn't do that. And Trump was 100%, spot on with that. David saying the former chief of the border control testified that Joe and Kamala told him to lie about the border. They did, right. And that's what was just reported. So how do you cover that up? It's just crazy to me. Democracy is corrupt by nature. That's it. That's why there's republics, 100%. That's exactly what it is, right? The ideology of man communism is the new religion. It corrupts absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we've seen it over and over and over again. And that's exactly, what happens. I'm just going through the narrative in here. Pelosi stopped the National Guard. That's right. And here we go, David, again. We are the greatest republic. That's it. Yeah. So if you look, why do people want to come to this country? Because it's a racist, divided country and it's so horrible here. The people from all over the world, we're talking about from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from the Middle East. Why do have over the years, why do people want to come here? Because this has been the one country where it's free for everybody, right? This is a nation built on immigration. We've legal immigration. Now, one of the things the Democrat leftists have done very well, and it's part of the narrative, is to bleed the interpretation and definition of terminology that's used. They do an amazing job at this. The stupidity of those on the right, where they continue to use their terminology, right? So we talk illegal immigration, alien resident, or alien immigrant, whatever you want to say, illegal. They're illegally in this country. They came into this country not through a border control checkpoint. They're here illegally. Some are here illegally because they came in legally and then they overstayed their visa. If you overstay your visa, you came in legally, but you're no longer allowed to be in this country. That's happened for years and years and years and years. People come here, they overstay their visa, they start working, they want to be here. They come here because of a passion, to better their life, but they can't get a permanent visa. So they came over here on a travel visa. So they came in legally. Now you have this massive amount of illegal immigration. First thing they do when they come in the country is break a law. They break the law of our border. So they come in illegally. Is our immigration system perfect? No, it can take a long time. I've gone through this process. It's not an easy process in this country. But you have to follow the rules. You have to make sure of how it gets done. So you follow the narrative. The idea of the terminology. So we need to stick and be very clear to what our terminology is. Mail-in ballots, right? Now all parties are accepting, we need mail-in ballots. We have to be the first to get our mail-in ballots in. No, as a Republican, as a conservative, as one who adheres to the Constitution, no, you do not need to adhere to the mail-in ballot. The mail-in ballot is a fraud. It's one that's perpetrated in order to easily cheat the system, or at least sow chaos in numbers. So if you can have mass numbers where you're creating confusion, which is what they want, because in confusion, it's hard to visualize and see clear to the actual fact. But if you have everything clean, then corruption stands out. In confusion, corruption is buried. And this is what they want. This is how the leftists operate. They want confusion. This is what they've done. This is why they had Joe Biden, who wasn't mentally capable, and they knew it. They had confusion and they wanted to take him out at the last moment. Maybe they're planning on trying to run him all the way through, thinking he might have a chance of winning, and then take him out and then put Kamala in. But the whole thing is all about confusion. You see it at the Secretary of State office. In Broward County, the Secretary of State office was always in a state of confusion, and then it had to be righted. And the reason why they had a state of confusion is because you could bury fraud and corruption. And that's on a massive scale, that they have a state of confusion where people don't know. So the mail-in ballot is, if it's not an absentee ballot that you've gone to the courthouse and registered for with a voter ID, with an ID and proof of citizenship and residency, then that mail-in ballot is legitimate. I used to have an absentee ballot. We purposely went to the courthouse because I was traveling a lot, and I always wanted to make sure that no matter what, I was able to send in, but that was an absentee ballot. Now I'm against mail-in voting, unless it's that way. Even in Florida, they redo it all the time. So supposedly they prove you are, but if you send mail-in ballots, you still have it's on mass. It's a mass scale. That means anybody can get one. With the absentee ballot, it was limited numbers of people got it. Trump, a lot of business people, travelers, people use the absentee ballot because it fit their narrative or their lifestyle. The majority of people don't need absentee ballots. They can come out on voting day. Now we have early voting and mail-in ballots. You have anything possible to sow confusion, because the early voting started already in some areas, and they're going to push this narrative. They don't even know what they're voting. We're so far early, and the mail-in ballots are going to flood in. And now, they're finding more fraud and corruption at the highest levels, because you don't know. So if you don't know, then what happens? How do you know if you have, um, check this out, right? Breaking. Oklahoma officials just announced that they removed 450,000 ineligible names from the voter rolls, including 100,000 dead people and 15,000 duplicate registrations that somehow got pushed into the system. 450,000. Now, you're telling me that with 100,000 dead mail-in ballots, right? If they just mailed them out, you're going to tell me that those 100,000 people aren't voting? So Oklahoma at the state level, again, it's not the federal level. It has to come down to the state level to make sure that they're keeping their voter rolls clean, and they have to do it without a state of confusion. It has to be a very clean and consistent process. And we don't always see that, right? So here, Oklahoma ensures only eligible voters participate in elections in part by following voter list maintenance procedures provided in state law, right? They have to do it. Not only should they do it, they have to do it, right? Since January 1, 2021, Oklahoma election officials have removed, so they knew what happened, right? January 6th, the 2020 election, right? They knew what happened. They knew exactly what happened in that election. Why was it January 1st, 2021 they started? Because they saw what happened. They saw the fraud that happened. They knew that it was, and Trump said it very succinctly, it is the state's responsibility. What did the state of Oklahoma do? Well, they took responsibility and they started cleaning up their voter rolls, because 2020 they knew was a fraud because of this 450,000 ineligible names on the voter rolls. That's what they knew. Whether they all voted, didn't vote, it's the confusion of the fact that they could vote, that you could have 100,000, 50,000, 200,000, maybe all 450,000 voting, right? So what did they remove? 97,000 deceased voters, 143,682 voters who moved out of state, 5,600 felons, 14,000 plus almost 15,000 duplicates, and 194,000 inactive voters who were canceled during the address verification process. How many were illegals? Oklahoma is a red state with 4 million people. What would 450,000 votes do? Right? Numbers like these can easily flip it from deep red to blue overnight. If this is happening there, you can only imagine the problem is 100 times worse in other states. Now, you can't tell me they didn't want that confusion. If you left it up to the Democrat, if they were in charge, right, they want this. They want the confusion. We saw it here in Broward County at the Secretary of State. They had confusion. They had dead people on the voter rolls. They had people who moved out of state on the voter rolls. They wanted this state of confusion, regardless of what the end intent was or what happened with it. They want the confusion. Again, it hides the corruptive nature of everything. So was it just Oregon, or are we having a problem in Arizona? 97,000 Arizonans granted voter access despite not providing proof of citizenship. This is over a number of years. There was some problems in the system that they identified. A clerical error stated those Arizonans did not provide the necessary documentation and may have been barred as voters. You have 97,000 people. What did they do? The Supreme Court said, hey, they can vote. That's it. No proof of citizenship. You don't know for a fact. There was a clerical error. Can you go back if there's no proof of citizenship in the system? That means that there's a question mark. How do you then have a Supreme Court say, well, hey, just grant them the right to vote? Why? Because they have early voting. Screw early voting. Find a mechanism to send a letter to those 97,000 people, say there was an issue. We need you to come in and prove your citizenship. There was a clerical error. It affected 100. You think 97,000 votes, if whatever percentage is fake, is it going to upset the election? When it comes down to small numbers, in order to upset an election. We're not talking about these massive swings, right? And felons aren't allowed to vote, right? They lose that. Here's another one. Look. Oh no, it's the same one. Sorry. Arizona GOP wants full ballots for 97,000 voters affected by MVD error. So here was the numbers. So this is a problem too. You can't have it both ways. I get it. There was an error. What was the purpose of the error? And this is the point. Was the error created purposely in order to disenfranchise 97,000 voters because it makes it lopsided? 36,000 Republicans, 26,000 Democrats, 3,000 independents, and non-party affiliated 28,000. There's a big number. Overall, that's a big number. I still say, if you can't go back and have proof, I'm going to, stick. It was an administrative error, but if it's an administrative error, then you have proof. If it was marked as not having proof, but you have proof somewhere in the system, call them in. They found it. You've got time. Give them an allowance. Voting is November 5th. We've got some time to have them come in and fix this problem. We're only talking about 97,000 people. Find a way, find a path to fix it for those 97,000 people. And call them in, or go back and do your due diligence and research every single one of them and find out what the facts are, instead of just blanket stating, hey, we're just going to allow everybody to vote. That's it. We're just going to let that happen. Right. It just it doesn't make sense. And then we have the fanboys on YouTube that don't understand the geopolitics of things, and they still think that the left is going to somehow come around on cryptocurrency and is going to support crypto. There's only one path. And you choose the path of freedom, you choose the path of the republic, you choose the path of the Constitution, you're going to choose the path of flourishing, innovative businesses and technologies out of this country. You support the other side, pure democracies, corruptive nature, socialism, taking away your overtaxation, taking away your earnings, supporting millions upon millions upon millions of illegals, giving them money, giving them rights, giving them a path to citizenship, circumventing our legal system, crushing and demoralizing the republic, just everything. That's the choice, right? Those are the facts. Whether you see it or not, those are very clear facts. The way they've spun things out of control and try to claim that one side, be Republicans or Trump and others, they're either crazy, they're deranged, they're out of touch, they're white, they're whatever the narrative is at the time. This is why this is how evil they are. They're just evil. They're bad. Right? They've stolen the terminology, but look at all these immigrants coming in here. Our country was built on immigrants. We have to support our immigrants, because the immigrants, they're going to do the labor that nobody else wants to do. Right? Is that what it's really about in California? Do they not have people that are going to go and pick the grapes on their they're at their wineries that's going to clean the houses of the elitists in Hollywood, all the socialist elitists in Hollywood? Is that what the real narrative is? Is that what they really want? I mean, but it's insane, right? The whole concept of what they're willing to do to destroy the fabric of this country to embrace power. And then they take all of these ideas and their emotional state, and they then try to plant it on anybody on the right that's trying to stand up for our liberties and our freedoms, which is what we need to do. So illegals, right? The newcomers, I forgot. Yes, the newcomers, right? They're not newcomers. We're not coming over here on the Mayflower and just discovering new territory. People coming out of Spain or wherever they were from England and France, and as they came over here and they're colonizing different parts of the world and putting down roots. I mean, come on, right? It's crazy. We don't want this narrative. They don't belong here. They do if they come in legally. I'm talking about coming in illegally. You don't belong here if you came in illegally. If you come in this country to milk the system of everything that we have to offer, but you don't want to contribute to this. They come over here because the Biden-Harris administration said, we're going to give you $150,000 towards a house. We're going to put you up in a 5-star hotel. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do all these things for the illegals. What about our veterans? What about homeless? What about our education system? What about immigrants who came in here legally? What are you doing to help and support them? What are you doing to help them learn English? What are you doing to help them go through job training if they need that? A lot of them come into this country, and they work multiple jobs. They're entrepreneurs. They do things to build themselves up for their next generation, because that's what the fabric of this country was meant to be. We didn't have people coming here specifically for the handouts, specifically for the Medicaid, specifically for the $150,000 they want to give them towards home ownership. What kind of nonsense is that? The reason why they want them to have home ownership is when you own a house here and you have a business here, you can be here legally. If you have a business here, right, you can travel back and forth. It gives you a fast path to legalization, right? They're manipulating the system. They're doing it on purpose. They know exactly what they want to do and what they're doing, right? So, and it goes further, right? The state of Nevada, conspiracy day, November 3rd, 2020, right? Senator Langford, 42,000 people voted more than once, 1,500 resurrected from the dead, 19,000 didn't live in Nevada, 8,000 voted from a non-existent address, 15,000 registered to a commercial address, 4,000 illegal aliens, 0 prosecutions. And U.S. Congress certified a criminal conspiracy on January 6th, right? So what exactly is going on? And there's the statement. And this Real Robert broke it down real nicely over here. This is what happened in Nevada, right? They have the receipts. They've seen it. They're showing it. So it's so obvious, right? So blatantly clear. I'm amazed that some of the fanboys just don't get it, right? They just don't see it, right? And then you don't have to go too far, because the narrative of these people, right? How clean they look, right? The whole thing, the way they portray themselves. Look, more housing, more accountability. Newsom. Let's see what this says real quick. I know we're kind of beyond the hour, but there's some critical points here.
I think Mr. Musk has missed the punchline. Parity is still alive and well in California, but deep fakes and manipulation of elections, that hurts democracy and the integrity of the system and trust. And we believe in truth and trust, and we think this law is sound and will be upheld in the courts.
So do you intend to seek legal action, whether on Elon Musk or any of the proliferating
Well,
deepfakes?
the law asserts that many can seek injunction relief, and I just signed the law. I just signed 32 other bills.
Interesting, right? So what's interesting about this, he just signed a new law to go after people that are promoting parity, political parity, right? Look at that smile. Look at the dishonesty. Is there going to be illegal action or legal action taken? Well, I just signed the bill into law. Just signed the bill into law to take legal action. Look at that smirk. He wants to go after Elon Musk. Elon Musk spent $44 billion to uphold the freedom of speech. $44 billion by buying Twitter, turning into the X platform. He did that to support freedom. And that you get these guys who are the exact opposite, right? Look at that smile. Look how proud he is of himself that he passed his bill. Look at the people behind him. All these people really support exactly what his narrative is. I mean, you can see in the eyes, some of them, granted, kind of have a snapshot moment. Yep. Anyone who has their head down, you think these guys actually support it?
On housing, and I haven't had a chance to review the specific lawsuit around a conservative blogger.
Look at their views. I mean, think these guys support what he's doing here? Like, who are these people? Why do they have these vests on? Are they just, employees from his office? Were they actually doing something? Were they working? Some of them, is it mixed in? Like
that seems offended by our law. I think
the body language. It's just like, do people really embrace what he's talking about? And this is what happens. It gets completely, out of control. And that's kind of where it's going. So how you have to look at these people that are right there, right? They're there. Hang on one second. Let me put this over here. I got to take this out. Hang on a second. Parody. Yeah, he goes after those who support freedom. Not parody, but okay, here we go. So Elon Musk, right? What's weird is how legacy media all has the same talking points simultaneously, even the same phrases like sharp as a tack about Biden before the debate. Then they all stabbed him in the back right after the debate ended and went from ignoring Kamala to saying she's the Messiah. Doesn't this seem a little odd? There's David Sachs, the turning point for me with the mainstream media. So let's just play this real quick. We don't have to play the
I agree with you that the mainstream
thing,
media
but
is
hang on, just parts of it. Let me go. I just find that the media bias, and again, this is all factoring together, right? It's all done on purpose to sow confusion. A state of confusion allows the corruptive nature.
I agree with you that the mainstream media is not just biased, it's just like all propaganda all the time. And the turning point for me in realizing this was COVID, I think before COVID, I realized that, yeah, the mainstream media is largely consists of liberals, so they're going to have a liberal bias. What we saw during COVID was that they were even lying about science, right? It wasn't just politics, it's like everything. We were told that the pandemic was a pandemic of the unvaccinated, even if you got what they were calling the vaccine, it didn't actually stop the spread. You go on and on that, we had to basically do social distancing, except when the riots of 2020 happened, then you're allowed to go outside and actually participate because
the fraud, right? The riots of 2020, a narrative they created, right? They wanted that narrative. They wanted to show it. It furthered the narrative of what their plan was, further down the road, as they knew they would use that imagery as part of the plan. Either maybe they used the imagery later, they figured they could use it, or it was all part of the narrative that the left was unfolding for the state of confusion leading up to January 6th. At some point, they would use the imagery that was emblazoned into the minds of Americans that watched it unfold across the country, the violent marches, the chaos, the burning cities, the burning buildings, the taking over city blocks, the narrative, the fictitious narrative of COVID, the social distancing, pulling people apart. They attacked people that wouldn't be vaccinated. Why? Because we knew better. We knew that you didn't have to be vaccinated. When they said that only certain workers, right? What was that terminology they used for the most critical workers? What was the fake terminology they came up with? So if you were getting paid $8 an hour to work as a grocery store clerk, you were the critical person, right? You could put your life on the line for $8 an hour because thousands of people had to get their groceries. So it was okay for you. But guess what? When the moment they said the essential worker, that's it, the essential. So as soon as they labeled the essential worker, and the essential worker, I figured if you're an essential worker, you're already on the front lines, right? You're a soldier, you're police, you're fire, you're a paramedic, you're a doctor, you're all these people that society needs in order to maintain. So we can keep those. As soon as they say, oh no, the grocery store clerk is an essential worker. Target is an essential store, but the small box privately owned one, not so essential. The big grocery store, essential. The small market, not so essential. The $8 employee that sees thousands of people come by their cash register every single day, and they're not in a hazmat suit, and they're not dropping dead every single day, then you immediately knew that the whole thing was a fraud, right? You knew that people, yes, they were getting sick, but the majority, 99%, 99 point whatever percent of the people that got COVID, they got sick. It was a bad flu. They recovered from it. They had antibodies, right? Some people had a cough and cold. They got over it. They had antibodies. Some people had the sniffles. Some people had a sore throat, whatever it was. Some people had a headache for a couple of days. They got over it. Some people, the small percentage of people that ended up in the hospital with it And then of those, a smaller percentage died of it. Now, what they did in New York and other places by taking people with COVID, sticking them in nursing homes to the most vulnerable of people, and you're bringing the flu, you're bringing pneumonia, you're bringing all these diseases or these illnesses into a nursing home, or you're putting them in a hospital where people's immune systems are already degraded. Of course, they're going to die, right? Or they're going to get really morbidly sick. Then they're going to die, and they're not going to die of COVID. They're going to die with COVID of other things, pneumonia, etc. Or when they put them on ventilators, they specifically suffocated these people because they didn't know, and they pumped ventilators into these people and killed them. So once they kind of knew these different classifications, then you realize the majority of us were okay. We were safe. And the other thing is, if you were surrounded by doctors that had common sense, that knew, that weren't willing to subject their ethics for politics, which again they did, many of them did. You had doctors all over the country that said this isn't a pandemic because here's how we treat it. We have treatment. If you get sick, here's what you do, and you'll protect yourself. The masks were a fraud. Everything was a fraud. If you're wearing a mask and the person isn't washing their hands, and they come out of their car and they've touched their face and they've touched their family and they've come into the grocery store and they've touched all the goods, and the receptionist is touching thousands and thousands of things that other people have touched, and then the receptionist goes and moves their mask and scratches their nose and goes and eats lunch and scratches their eyes, and they're not dropping dead of COVID, and they're not getting sick. I mean, the whole narrative, it's just crazy to me. And then people were just like, it was amazing to see people's mentality and behavior over this. We looked at it, said, we got to keep going. We can't stop, right? Took my son to with his group of friends. We're at tennis lessons, took him to the beach, took him to restaurants that we're the only ones in. We're going out for pizza. We're anywhere we could go. We went. We're miniature golfing, driving range. We went. We were every weekend. We are out and about. We didn't even hesitate. That here in Florida started in March. By May, pretty much 4 weeks later, everything was open again. 25%, 50%. Palm Beach, by May, everything was open 100%. I remember because we couldn't go out here. We went up to Delray Beach, and by May, the streets were packed with people. Packed. Down here, same thing. So we had a little few month hiatus, and then people were coming out, right? They're coming out and doing things. And, some cases you had to wear a mask walking in, but then when you were standing, the germs would attack you worse. So you had to have a mask on if you're standing, but as soon as you sat down to eat, you could take your mask off because the germs obviously were only at a certain height. They weren't at table height. So all the irrational, thought process that went behind this. I was on airplanes. I was traveling. I was going around. But problem is, I'll go on an airplane, especially in the wintertime, right before this whole thing happened, December to New Year's. We flew up to Detroit. I got so sick when I was up there. It was the worst that I've ever had. My brother-in-law was down here in December. And he had the worst cough in December and went home. They couldn't figure it out. Took weeks. And then his daughter got sick and ended up in the hospital, and all these things in December and January, way before it all started. I got really sick. Anytime I travel like that in the wintertime and I look at northern germs, like I somehow get sick. Not to do with any of this other stuff. So I'm always traveling with remedy, right? Vitamin C, just a whole bunch of things just to make sure that you can, feel good and stay good and try to shorten duration if you're going to catch a cold, especially in the wintertime when you're traveling. But then the narrative of how they twisted everything and the illogic of it. And then you say, if they have illogic here and there, why wouldn't they have illogic on crypto, the crypto markets? What are they trying to do? Right. The whole thing. And to boot, where did the whole sickness start? It started over in China. They know exactly where it started. They know exactly how it got out. It didn't start because of a bat. That was the other thing. They tried to label this as somehow somebody ate a bat and then it just spread like wildfire. It's like, come on. You could tell it was a created ailment. It wasn't something that just popped up out of nowhere. It was created. And then the tests the claims of the number of COVID cases, who cares about it? Why were they testing for it? Why are people still testing for it? Who cares? Right? You're sick, you get a remedy, you're better. Right? People were in such a turmoil. Oh, we got to test for COVID. Got to test for COVID. Okay, well, you've had COVID for 3 weeks. How do you feel? Oh, it's good after 48 hours. It's no longer contagious. It's in your system. It's the way they test it. It's the way they magnified it. They looked at an average flu virus and they magnified to an extent so they could find the COVID strand within the flu virus. But the tests were being manipulated, and it was all proven facts. It's not like my opinion. Everything's been proven. Like, they showed all of it, that all of it was manipulated. So who cared about COVID cases? That's what they kept saying. Oh, there are 100,000 COVID cases. There are another 100 cases. Okay, were they sick? No. Were they contagious? No. Did you have to do anything? No. So who cares about the cases? Why is a case relevant? They wanted to make it sound medical. Again, terminology. It all goes back to the manipulation of how they use terminology. So though, as soon as you understand how they manipulate terminology, and you don't think they manipulate terminology and everything else they do, which is why when I hear and I see people talking about stuff going on in the Middle East, you don't think that the left and the Islamists are corrupting the narrative of terminology to suit their purpose, and yet libertarians and some on the right, most on the left, not all, because you have people like Richie Torres, but they understand history. They've read history. They've been a student of history. They understand the dynamics of the Middle East, and yet you have all these ignorant pundits and people commenting that know nothing about the historical facts on the ground of the Middle East, and yet they want to provide feedback. They want to castigate a certain people. They want to talk about they want to talk about genocides and all this stuff without understanding the true fact of everything. They go back to a certain date. They never want to go back further. They never want to look at the real facts on the ground. Why? Because they're being manipulated through the manipulation of terminology that's been used for a long time. And we're seeing it very clear right here. These guys are having an awakening on the media. The media manipulates the terminology. The leftist governments manipulate the terminology to suit their own interests. They've done it for a long time. The right, do they try? They're not really good at it. The right has never been good at protesting. The left is really good at protesting. They have a lot of just, Autobots that just follow what they do. So for some reason, they're just better at gathering people to protest and go out, and maybe they don't work. I don't know what it is, but typically people with limited government, it's only a recent phenomenon since the Tea Party, that there's been gatherings in the street of people on the right. They typically don't protest well. They don't corrupt the nature of terminology. They're just not good at that because they try to see things factually and logically. So you can't corrupt nature of things when you do that. Now, the rhino, centrist, leftists, will do that, but not to the extent that, but the leftist propagandists, they're so good at corrupting the nature, and people get so drawn into it. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds like they might have a point there. That might be real factual, right? That there's genocide going on. We can get into a whole conversation of that, and you start looking at the historical evidence. Go pre-World War II. Go back throughout the centuries. Go look at how things actually developed over in the Middle East, and you'd be shocked. You'll be just shocked. I don't want to get fully into it right now, but you'll be shocked that that it didn't just start with some leftist propaganda, that are embracing like the different publications that came out that were based on Nazi propaganda that even started before then, based on also propaganda that's perpetrated and promoted through the Islamists, because the Islamist cause of terrorism is for global conquest. But yet there's still some people on the right that will embrace their narratives because they just for some reason want to believe it with a passion. But you have to be so careful on terminology, and if you don't understand that basic principle, you're easily manipulated. And we've seen that. We saw the easy manipulation of people on a global scale because they just want, it comes down to corruptive of terminology and then how you use it. So if you can use it in propaganda, you have to have fear. There has to be a fear mechanism, right? So safety, security, and health. If you can put people in that position, and the lack of food. If you take those all in, take away safety and security, it's not safe to go out of your house. If you easy access to quality food, if there's a healthcare scare issue, they're going to control and manipulate you because you're terrified, you're in fear. That's how they've always done it, right? How is it that the Democrats have brainwashed the black community? Because they somehow over the years have instilled this notion within the black community that there's still this racial divide, that if you allow Republicans to take control, they want to put the black community back into slavery, which is further from the truth, right? Because that's the leftist narrative. We know, where the slave ownership lied within the breakdown of a political space within the Jewish community. What is it? How did the Democrats manipulate the Jewish vote? Because they tell them when they came over through Ellis Island and before, right, coming out of conflict from all these countries, and World War II, coming out of the Holocaust, they bring them through Ellis Island, and the moment they walk in, then they're registering them to vote. The Democrats, first and foremost, have been activists from the beginning. They're registering people to vote at Ellis Island, immigrants coming in as Democrats from all over the world, registering them as Democrats. You didn't have Republicans there registering people but the Democrats were there. And what did they tell people within the Jewish community? If you vote for a Republican, they want to send you back to the gas chambers. They're anti-Semitic, they're racist. This is the narrative. And the Democrats have created a narrative around that over all these decades of fear. It's all about fear. And the smartest of people, right? That's why you're having an awakening. People are waking up and saying, holy crap, all these years I've been brainwashed. I've been brainwashed that just because the family structure has always voted a certain way, and you voted that way, and you're like, oh, well, my family must have known. They voted a certain way. This is what the community has said, so they must be right, because the majority of the people that are around me in my circle of influence believe a certain way. But at that moment, and you break away, and all of a sudden you wake up and you look around, you're like, holy crap, all the people around me are wrong. I'm the one that's right, right? I'm not the crazy one. Why is the majority, pure democracy, right? Why is the majority telling me I'm crazy? And that's exactly what a pure democracy will do, right? It'll be the majority singling out the minority, saying, not only are you wrong, but you're crazy, right? Your narrative doesn't fit in to our society. It doesn't make any sense. And so this is where, you have that corruptive nature, and people are now becoming exposed to it. And it amazes me because I've known it for a long time, so I've seen it years and years and years and years ago. I could see from when I was a kid. I don't know how, but it's gone with me my entire life. My awakening moment was when I was in fourth grade, and Reagan had won 1980. And I can remember distinctly because we were in student housing at the time, and my mother was a graduate student, and and Reagan won, and all the students in the building, my mother included at that time, had come out screaming, "Oh my God, the world has come to an end. Reagan just won." And I'm thinking, first, I just thought, this is crazy behavior. Who does this, right? I'm 9 years old, and I'm like, who does something like this? Then after that, we moved overseas, right? And I had an opportunity to grow up overseas and see different things on how society works in other places. And it was amazing to me, because from that moment in time till today, my thought process developed always in the same direction. It never wavered, not once. It just kept developing. I kept learning and understanding from that moment forward. And I'm seeing people are having this awakening now, right? And that's what this video is all about, right? It's an awakening. Elon Musk, an awakening. One after another, Bill Ackman, an awakening, right? You're seeing Tulsi Gabbard, an awakening, RFK, an awakening. Like there's one after another is awakening. So what's going on here? Show your comments. I'm looking at my monitor over here. What is it? Let me look here. Scientists just confirmed when Diddy dies, if he's buried at sea, the oil slick will extend 3 times around the world. There's so much corruptive nature, right, in what's going on over there in Hollywood. It's just crazy to me how sleazy, all of that stuff, how they buried it, how they hid it, right? And they just, man, it's mind boggling. But then again, this just has to be exactly what they do, right? So, oh man, I went way over time. We kind of got the idea here. They're awakening. I probably don't have to play any more of that. But I did have, and I'm glad that you guys are hanging in there, standing by. We'll have to depart here. Still got a bunch of people over there on X. Man, our YouTube channel is getting crushed. People don't like the politics, I guess. That's what it is. They get afraid of the politics, so they run off, and they don't like to hang out and have these discussions all the time. But I appreciate those who want to stick it out. I think it's important, even if we can get to a small group of people. I think it's really critical that we pass this message of along, people around the world, around the country, have to understand this so succinctly. It starts at the grassroots level. It starts with a small group of people, and it's every place, right? We're talking about freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of earning, freedom of innovation. We want limited government. We want our constitutional republic. We don't want intrusion of a pure democracy. And then I look around the world and I see problems in many different parts of the world, that don't have the same rights that we do. And the people are more subject to the government whims, especially over in the EU. The EU is having lots of issues because within the EU, specific countries are now at risk, and they're trying to fight back. And they're saying, you know what, no more illegal immigration. Look what it's done to England. Look what it's doing to France. Look what has happened in parts of Italy. Look what's happening around the world. And people over there are finally, they're kind of having an awakening too. And they're fighting back a little bit, and they're like, hey, we want our freedoms. And they have to get it, right? And I like Gad Assad. He said, I'm increasingly thinking Kamala Harris is not a real person. She's the result of some AI experiment gone wrong. No human being other than Justin Trudeau could be this soulless and so utterly lobotomized. But you hear what she says. I've said this for so long.
We love our country.
It just seems that she's drunk. There's something wrong with her, right? And it's just weird. The eyes, the tone, because sometimes has clarity and other times she doesn't. But yeah, let's just watch this one.
We love our country. I love our country. I know we all do. That's why everybody's here right now. We love our country. We take pride in the privilege of being American. And this is a moment where we can and must come together as Americans, understanding we have so much more in common than what separates us.
That'd be nice if they believed it, but nothing in her eyes, in her emotion, in her body language, but then it's just like they're trying to make her like it's crazy.
We believe in fighting for that. That's how we came into being, because the people before us understood that one of the greatest expressions for the love of our country, one of the greatest
She's listening. She must be
expressions of
listening to
patriotism
something. There's no way she's
is
talking.
to fight for the ideals of who we are, which includes freedom.
It's amazing how they want to talk, and they, there's some parts, she's just doesn't sound coherent. The whole thing is just very cringe on how they're really trying to prop her up. It's just it's unreal to me. Exactly what they're trying to do, right? So it's like, what in the world is going on, right? What are they doing? What exactly is, how are people, following this and kind of buying into this stuff, this illogic. And where's the short clip? There was one really good clip. Let's see if I have that one. No, I trying to find. There was one kind of a parallel clip that was pretty good. Oh, here, this is everything right here, and then we'll call it. But this was let me see if we can show this real quick. Let's see how this works. If this works, hang on.
How are you going to bring down the cost of food and groceries?
Good. Very good. Thank you. So we have to start always with energy. Always. I don't want to be boring about it, but there's no bigger subject. It covers everything. If you make donuts, if you make cars, whatever you make, energy is a big deal. And we're going to get that. It's my ambition to get your energy bill within 12 months down 50%. If I can do that, we've done a hell of a job. 5 not 15, 50. Interest rates are going to follow, and actually they're going to follow for another reason. The economy is now not good. And interest rates, you'll see they'll do the rate cut and all the political stuff tomorrow, I think. And, will he do a half a point? Will he do a quarter of a point? But the reason is because the economy is not good. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do it. But we're going to get interest rates down, and we got to work with our farmers. Our farmers are being decimated right now. They're being absolutely decimated. And, one of the reasons is we allow a lot of farm product into our country. We're going to have to be a little bit like other countries. We're not going to allow so much we're going to let our farmers go to work.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
So here we go. Right. Succinct answer. Trump. The narrative they built around Trump, he's passionate. He has support from so many people. He's helped so many people. We have evidence on the ground, right? He was in office for 4 years. Things were great for those 4 years. Kamala's in office now. Things aren't so great. Notice how they never talk about her being vice president ever. They don't bring it up. They always go back to when she was district attorney. They never talk about her actual, policies and the evidence on the ground of what her policies have done. And so Trump is very clear. Here's how we bring the cost down. Energy costs have to come down by 50%. We need to drop interest rates. We need to do all these things because when you do that, the cost of producing food goes down, transporting the food, growing the food, bringing the resources to grow the food, again, operating the grocery store, bringing resources to the grocery store, powering all those the whole chain is less costly. He gets it, right? He's laid out his plan. This is where it all starts. Energy. And then, similar question.
Yeah. First of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that.
Like, what in the world? Like, where in the world, where in the world? Like, what in the world is going on? Like, there's nothing, right? Nothing going on. Hey, XRP plumbing, what's going on? So it just, if you watch that yesterday, there was like nothing. She said nothing. She went on and droned on and no answer. And then when there was another question, same thing. How are you going to get prices down? Blah, 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 blah. Went off on a different topic, just like that. Just went off into a different topic. How are you going to help? Nothing. Zero plan, zero policy, zero anything. And it all does go back to their policies on energy and how do you get the economy going? What can government do to stimulate the economy? Not much other than, well, let's see, get rid of regulation. allow energy to proliferate, right? We need proliferation of energy resources in this country. You have to bring the cost of energy down. That's where it all begins. It begins right with, how you're going to grow and move and produce product. So if you can bring all of that down, and then the whole rest of the economy will start falling into place, and you can impact all of that. Because when you have super high gas prices, super high electric, everything else is going to go up. Let's get things moving in the other direction, and interest rates allow lumber costs to come down by making sure that it's less expensive to actually to get the lumber. Let the mining resources, whatever we need, right? It has to be done, and it all starts on how do you actually acquire and produce those products. Trump is spot on, and he proved it. These guys don't know what they're talking about. It's crazy. They want to tax, overtax. It's all about money. It's all about global warming tax. It's all about more gas on, or tax on your gas. It's all about fictitious narratives of, we're going to make everybody drive electric cars and we're going to force it to happen, whether it's good or bad, whether those cars cost $80,000 or not, whether they're going to be good for you or bad for you. Doesn't matter. Whether we're going to overtax the electric grid because the electric grid won't be able to support all the electric cars on the road, whether the electric cars are good, whether we have rapid chargers or we don't have them. That's their narrative, right? They created a fictitious narrative, and then they want to, then they're going to run on that narrative. They destroyed the economy. They made gas prices. Then they're going to now come in and say, oh, well, we're going to help you. And that's what it's all about. Again, the corruptive nature of that power, but it all starts with terminology. They corrupted terminology, and then the general public allow them to corrupt that terminology, and that factors into everything. That factors through geopolitics, factors into crypto. Gary Gensler corrupted the terminology. Everything's clear. We understand the law. We understand there's legal clarity already in the crypto space. Obviously, not. So it's just so crazy. Now here's another one. That's funny. It's hard to do all of these things all at once. I do want to interact more with the chat. Sometimes it's easier to go through and read the chat while somebody else is talking. So Flo said, did anyone else see the video of a lady going to jail because her child missed so many days of school? The child had a medical issue, I think cancer. The mother was in and out of court for over a year. Yeah, I just saw that, and didn't read through all of it, but they want to put her in jail because the child missed like 30 something days of school because the child is sick, and they don't even want to look at that. Yeah, Osman is saying your interaction with the chat is like Kamala's attention to the U.S. economy. Zero. I'm reading through. I'm trying to get it up there. I know there's some really good points in there, so that's hilarious. And then to this one, Devon, lumber. We have closed a coal mine next to Drax power station and now import wood pellets from Canada and the U.S., transport it across the Atlantic. And they say it's renewable. Oh, millions in subsidies. That's right. So all of your tax dollars go into bring this in when you could produce it locally. And that's it, So that's it. That's what we got. Hey, we'll be back here tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got a lot more to talk about tomorrow. That we'll put that one up tomorrow. I got to get that video. I think we might have played it the other day, but show the video of Trump trying to pay with Bitcoin with the Bit Boys. The video of Trump. Yeah. So I know that some of those videos, you get these crypto bros and whatever they try to, they're putting all that together. Bitcoin, everybody knows paying with Bitcoin isn't easy unless you're using Spend the Bits, because Spend the Bits goes through the XRPL and then you can move it, a little more seamlessly. But, I think was the Lightning Network, everything's still a little bit sluggish and difficult to use. So, but anyhow, that's what we got. We'll be back here tomorrow, p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys are awesome. This was really great. Oh yeah. 45. Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin isn't meant to be spent. The technology just isn't there 100%. Let's use a credit card. Credit card's almost instantaneous. That's how it works. So anyhow, you guys have been awesome on X, on YouTube, and our one listener over there on Twitch. I think that's Crypto Whelp if he's over there. But anyhow, you guys are awesome, and we will check you guys out on the next one. I am out of here. That's it. See you guys later.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.